Hi, people. Good evening. It is the 24th of November, 2020. It's Tuesday, and this is another edition of the Pandemic Podcast. My name is Addy Ads. I'm an interviewer, public intelligence agent from the Midwest, and I'm joined by ShrimpZoo on the East Coast in Buffalo. Shrimp, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
I put the entropy chat in the live chat if anybody wants to join that for uncensored discussion and or super chats. Feel free to do that. We're live on my channel as well as the Pandemic Podcast channel, in addition to my Facebook and Periscope. And we just want to talk a bit about the situation we find ourselves in the United States here, and this election hangover that is continuing all the way from about 3 weeks ago. We're about 3 weeks to the day, actually, after election day on the 3rd, 24th. And what are your thoughts, Shrimp, of everything that's been going on? What have you been looking into recently? What's up with you?
Um, my thoughts on the election. I mean, I really didn't care who won the election to start with. Um, I definitely think that Biden won the election, but I do think that there was fraud. I don't think there was fraud on a huge scale, but I think there was probably tens of thousands at least of votes that were probably skewed by whoever was counting them. I'm sure there's like very liberal SJW types and like Black Lives Matter and Antifa supporters counting the ballots that probably skewed in towards of Biden. I don't think we'll really ever know how much voter fraud there was, but I think there's probably more fraud in this election than any other one, besides maybe like Gore versus Bush. I'm just not sure how much fraud there was. And like Dominion, some people say it's a Canadian company. I've heard other people say it's Spanish. It seems hard to tell really about. I don't know why we don't have American companies doing the election. It seems odd that like foreign companies are handling our presidential elections. So I don't think we should use Dominion again or foreign companies for our voting. I think we definitely got to switch to voting so it's more clear. I just don't think there was fraud on such a huge scale as many of Trump supporters believe. But I'll never really know for sure.
Yeah, it's well, as far as the knowing exactly how much fraud went on, I think that'll be very difficult to do. I was talking to this man who testified before Congress. I think it was in 2004 for Bush Kerry. And let's hold on. I gotta address this guy. We got this person looks like a Biden go hard, maybe Antifa esque person. Another sad fraud conspiracy stream. Zero evidence you chose. Well, as far as zero evidence, there certainly is lots of evidence. Looking at all the affidavits of people seeing fraud with their own eyes. Now, as far as the election voting system goes, I said I was talking to Clint Curtis. His name's Clinton Curtis. 2 days ago, I think it was. And as I said, he testified in front of Congress for, I think it was '04, but he was explaining, because he's also a programmer, he was explaining that it's quite easy to do election fraud using coding, because it's not like to cast a vote electronically is one of the smallest, sizes of information that one could use a computer for. It's certainly smaller than a picture, let alone a video. It's just a few bytes. So in order to flip an entire election, even for the nation, it would only take a minute or two to do that. He also explained further that it's actually also feasible to digitally erase your tracks such that you can't tell if a code has been a source code has been tampered with, or if the source code that was tested for the people who are supposed to test the validity or reliability or security of the code is in fact the same code that the system itself is using on the day of the election. Now, as far as it pertains to this instance, I think will need more evidence to prove uh, what fraud has been going on and exactly how much. Now, I think you did make a good point. I think some of that is going to be close to impossible to find all of it, but that isn't as important if you can prove sufficiently that the fraud swayed the election. You don't have to search out every single instance of the fraud. Now, again, just my subjective experience being in Wisconsin,
I think,
Illinois,
yeah, I
Maryland,
think the
New York.
media was.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems to me overwhelmingly Trump was more popular throughout the country. But all right, what are your thoughts?
I think the media was definitely in favor of Biden winning. Even Fox News a little bit, which surprised me. Um, I just think that if you were to have a popular vote, I think that about 30%, maybe 50% of Republicans would vote for Trump. I don't. Trump does not even have the support of all Republicans. He has about the support of maybe half of the Republican Party. I mean, maybe a little bit more, but even if you were to say he had the support of 60, 70% of the Republican Party, that might be stretching it. I think at most he's only got about 50% support of the Republican Party. Even though nobody liked Biden, every Democrat out there voted for Biden. And I see that the country is mostly liberal, mostly Democrats. Um, Republicans are a minority in the country. The only way they can actually win is because of the electoral vote, and because like almost every Republican in America votes, but Democrats really don't vote like how the Republicans do. If you were to force everyone in America to vote, Democrats would win every time, by like 60, 70%.
Yeah, you may be right there as far as, especially with young people not voting, but that's besides the point because the people that didn't vote, I think, because I think it was quite obvious Trump was winning in a landslide when everyone went to sleep, and then everyone woke up, and all of a sudden Biden is the president, which again, the media doesn't call who the president-elect is. The electors do, which again they still haven't cast their vote yet. That'll be on the 14th of December. So no vote yet. And as far as I don't even know if I would agree with like there's more liberals. I would say there's more people who maybe young people in particular who don't like Trump. But as far as I'm just using the metric of signs, which is one medium of measurement. It wasn't even close. The Trump support was just way more for signs in everywhere I went. All those states I mentioned, Oregon, Maryland, even New York. When I was there, other than New York or where we went downtown, uh, everyone, where you live, Shrimp, it's like it's almost all Trump signs. It's mostly Trump signs, and I noticed that everywhere I went. Ohio, Michigan, So I think the
It's
only,
like 60% probably at least.
yeah, I think Trump only extended the lead he had in 2016, and you made a good point as well. Like it's just absurd. We're using a voting system such that our votes get outsourced to foreign countries like Belgrade, Serbia, and Venezuela. And really, the key point is going to be Belgrade, Serbia, because of I don't know if you saw Paul
Yeah.
Katrowski shared a document that pointed the IP address, traffic to Belgrade, Serbia. And despite that, Sidney Powell still hasn't mentioned Belgrade for some reason. She keeps mentioning Venezuela. But that being said, I even there's things and there's things you can prove, and just because everyone knows there was fraud going on and a steal, a coup, whatever verbiage you may want to use, it doesn't mean that we can prove it entirely. So I think time is running out in a sense, for Trump to make sure that the election isn't stolen, because I think it was stolen.
Yeah, I mean, it was stolen on both sides in a way because I feel like Andrew Yang, he was still in the race when Kamala Harris was already dropping out, and Bernie Sanders had more support than Hillary Clinton when she ran before, and he had more support than Joe Biden. I feel like this time, um, a lot of people are eating me up in the comments, but I mean, I really do not like Joe Biden. I've made like 2 or 3 videos dissing Joe Biden on my channel, and I made one video about Donald Trump. I really do not like Joe Biden, but so many people are very, very far to the right. They are not able to see Trump is the most hated president, maybe in American history.
I would
I mean,
also say
look
it's
look
most
what
loved.
people were doing. They're burning down America because of Trump.
I think I agree with you, Shrimp, but wouldn't you say he's also the most loved president?
Yeah, Trump is the most hated president of my lifetime by far, more than Bush. Look, Bush never had Antifa riots. Nobody burned down a building for Bush or Obama before. Nobody burned buildings down for Mitt Romney or Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
The
Well,
the protest opposing Trump is it's something that's never happened in American history. And a lot of people are saying I'm nuts. I mean, I haven't seen any proof. If if you show me proof, but like the press meetings with Powell and Rudy Giuliani, this coming from someone who could have voted for Trump, those press meetings with his lawyers looked absurd. Was not a good look. If somebody handed me a sheet of paper and they're like, here's all the dead people that voted, but every time I look into dead people voting, I can't find any solid proof. So I don't know how much fraud there was. I have to see the proof. I suspect there was fraud, but not millions of votes. But I really can't say because I haven't seen proof.
yeah, I don't think it's millions, because you don't need millions. You only need, like, if it was 80-20 Biden or even 60-40, I think that would be too obvious. They only did it in the key counties that they needed them, right? So we got Clark County in Las Vegas, the infamous Wayne County in Michigan, where I think they really focused their efforts, and then now Georgia, we're seeing, of course, Atlanta, and then the other one, Pennsylvania. That was the other one, which is where they're all, uh, you know, competing over. But the districts, the Supreme Court justices who I guess reigns over those districts, I think is Clarence Thomas for Atlanta, and I know Amy Coney Barrett was at least one of those as well, and she will definitely vote in favor of, I would say, Trump, regardless of almost what happens. Uh, so I think in that sense, Trump does have an advantage with Amy Coney Barrett when it goes to the Supreme Court, which I do think it will. But you're right. I mean, that's what the lawyer said the other night too. He's like, "Look, I'm not saying there's not fraud. It looks like there probably was a lot of fraud, but unless you can prove it, you know, it's not going to help us much." But I mean, regardless, we can never use these types of systems
Yeah,
again. I don't
I
think
think
we
there
as
was
Americans can
fraud.
tolerate.
I think there was, but
Yeah, Yeah, I was just saying.
I see a lot of people in the comments say that George Soros paid the protesters. I also don't think that Soros paid the protesters.
No. Well, they do have support of I think outside groups for sure. Certainly BLM does, but I was talking about it today. Like BLM is mostly white people. It's kind of weird. It's just it's used for racial division. It's what it is. It's about. It's used. It was propelled for racial division. It's scary times we're living in, ShrimpZoo. I just saw this video of Toronto police responding to reporters because a restaurant owner, a barbecue restaurant owner in Toronto, said he was going to defy uh, curfew or defy the lockdown, really, and be open for business. And they said that they were planning on arresting him and fining anyone who was a patron or a customer uh, that day, which is tomorrow, which I think is absurd. I think these people have ridiculous amount of a sway over the populace. They're making the masses fight each other, and I think that the people who enforce these tyrannical rules are they themselves tyrants as well. Let us go back to the Nuremberg trials, where I was just following orders was not a viable excuse. I did not accept that excuse, and I don't think that's a viable excuse. That was the German excuses. I was just following orders. So, these it's tough times to live in. It really is. It seems like no matter what happens, you're going to have half of the country, more or less, who doesn't believe in the election results. But I just watched this film called The Plot Against the President last night, which was actually quite good. I think it was Andrew Wakefield.
I'd say about 30%.
30% of what?
That's how much people I think are Trump supporters. Like 30% of America is probably Trump supporters, and maybe another 10 to 20% are Republicans behind like Romney or something.
Oh yeah, the Republicans don't. The GOP, I don't think supports Trump. Now I said this yesterday too on my Twitter. I was like, if you think the GOP can be saved, you're naive and foolish, because what do we see? We just saw in Georgia they certified the vote for Biden, even despite all of these allegations and affidavits coming forward of election fraud. This was always the plan. Like it just clicked for me a couple days ago, Shrimp. The 6-foot rule. If you're a poll watcher, you can't see what you're doing 6 feet away. Behind the glass, you may as well be watching somebody shuffle cards or play solitaire. And that was always the plan with this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never gonna really agree that there was millions of voting fraud, because it's just like people saying that. I gotta see the proof. I also think that like MSNBC and liberal media pretty much refused to have on Yang and Tulsi Gabbard and other people that were running. So I feel like in a way the media basically discounted some of the Democrats from running as well as Trump. I just don't know how much fraud there was. There's probably fraud in every election. Just how much was there? I just don't know.
Do you remember who was winning at the beginning in the Democratic primaries? And then he just disappeared?
I mean, I went to the protest with Addie. I don't think that any of the protesters I've ever seen have ever been paid by George Soros. I just think it's like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. It's mostly high school kids that are going out because they're not in school, they're not having jobs, the economy is collapsing. They don't have much else to do. I don't think that Soros is sending like 15 and 16-year-old kids that live with their mom and dad. I don't think he's sending them checks. I think some like mayors and council members and people like that may have been bailing people out in Portland, but I don't think there's a massive George Soros like funding riots in Rochester and Buffalo.
Yeah, as far as the Soros thing, I can't say definitively if he's behind it. I wouldn't be surprised, but there certainly is a cabal. There's no doubt in my mind on that. And Jacqueline just brought this up, which I was going to say earlier with the Dominion system. This was a system that, if you remember in 2016, when everybody was Bernie crazy, that was a system that flipped it from Bernie to Hillary, because Bernie was by far way more popular than Hillary Clinton was. But they used that same Dominion system. This is per Sidney Powell. Per Sidney Powell, attorneys. They don't just say these. They flipped that in 2016, the Democratic primaries and the ticket from Hillary to Bernie, and they did the same thing. I think this year with Trump and Biden. And that's the thing is, when you get these QR codes, you have no idea what it means when it gets printed out. Anything electronic, there's no chain of custody like there is with a paper ballot, and I think that's been well established, and we have talked about that before. But it's just this whole year is just really revealing the outstanding and ridiculous corruption and dirtiness, lack of transparency, really, in this country. Oh, I was gonna say, Jacqueline. Jacqueline brought that up. So what did Bernie
Yeah, it
do?
should have been
Bernie got
Biden
paid
versus
off.
or not Biden. Should have been Bernie Sanders versus Trump.
No, I agree. Let me just say this. I'll let you go, Shrimp. Bernie, in exchange for accepting defeat in 2016, he got a bunch of new money and a new house. Per Sidney Powell.
I'm just reading some of these comments here. You got
Yeah.
all that's all your followers there.
Yeah. So Jenny, my backup channel is Anakin Skywalker. Most people go on my main channel for the chat, and anybody else who wants to do that. That's where the majority of people will be who follow me. I will put the entropy chat as well. If people want to use that just for super chats or whatever. I know Ryan Dawson uses entropy chat a lot. By the way, I'll be talking to Ryan on Thanksgiving. So if people want to get tuned for that, please do. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, just checking out these comments here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We're talking election hangover. It's 3 weeks after that election day. We are deep into the fourth quarter of 2020. My intelligence was right. Trump did win Ohio. I'm going to say that again. We called it. That's another anomaly. And I know statistical anomalies are not evidence of election fraud, but I'm just pointing that out. That every president, I think since like 86, I'm not sure what the year was exactly, that has won Ohio has won the presidency. And if you also remember, we did an election stream on the night of the election. Trump was winning in Detroit. That was the big surprise for all of us. Where I was Trump winning in Wayne County. That was very, very surprising, and I think more evidence that this is one big collusion. As I said, I was going to follow up the plot against the president, and then I'll let you go here, Shrimp. Plot against the president. I believe it's Andrew Wakefield is the director, but I watched it last night. Fantastic film. It really gets into the coup, the nonstop attacks that the Trump team has been seeing since he got inaugurated. Starting, of course, with Michael Flynn being the target of the deep state. And you can say what you want about Michael Flynn, but from what I understand from the documentary, he was attempting to curtail the intelligence services, specifically by cutting their budgets and cutting their funds where they weren't being efficient and or appropriating funds efficiently. And this was the huge motivation for James Comey and his thugs, as the documentary said, to go after him. And the FBI is a theatrical agency. They don't beat crime. They don't defeat it. They manage it, as one great man once said, Jeffrey Prather. I would say they even create it. They create crime. They are the principal creators of crime in this country. Go ahead, Shrimp.
I'm getting this pretty hard in these comments. Except for that one. That's a pretty good one.
You look good, Shrimp.
I mean, I basically just need to see more proof before I can see how much fraud there was. That's really it. And like, I'm never gonna take Rudy Giuliani seriously. Like, personally, Rudy Giuliani is like a clown, not because of his hair melting off, but he's super outlandish. Trump should have hired. I would have taken it much more serious if Trump hired like a good, like, reputable lawyer. People in New York don't even like Rudy Giuliani, and he's too out there. I feel like just like Biden has dementia, I feel like Giuliani's like in early stages of dementia. If Trump had like a good lawyer, not like QAnon lawyers, if he had like some good New York City lawyers and like top of their class or whatever, I'd believe it much more. And if they had like clipboards with evidence, and I'm not just going to believe Giuliani saying that there's fraud. He's got to have some type of proof for me to see it. I'm not just going to take him at his word.
Yeah, Sidney Powell, I think, is a lot more credible for sure than Giuliani. I don't understand Giuliani, man. He just seems like a clown to me. Like, he seems like he's trying to help Trump, but he's like not very good at it.
Yeah. He makes Trump look bad. Trump will look better without Giuliani. He should fire Giuliani.
Yeah, and another thing that's sketchy about Giuliani is, wasn't he mayor during 9/11?
Yeah. So people liked him back then for some reason because of it, but his reputation has went downhill since. And he's had like, everybody has said this before, but he married his cousin before. He's just like, he's a really weird person.
Did you see who Biden brought on his cabinet, his supposed cabinet?
I haven't like looked into any of them except for like the virus experts, which I guess I was more or less fine with because I'm really not a fan of Fauci. I prefer Osterholm to Fauci, I guess. But I haven't looked at any of his cabinet members yet.
John Kerry. Do you remember that guy? John Kerry. Of course you do.
For the climate, like special climate, like something or whatever.
You can't make this up, dude. John Kerry was a presidential candidate when I was not even double digits years old.
Yeah, it's pretty weird that John Kerry is all of a sudden back in like a high profile like position out of nowhere. And it's for the climate, something he's really not known for. He's like a Vietnam vet. I don't know. It was weird.
He's a Vietnam swamp creature. And I mean,
Biden filling up the swamp in DC.
And I was just, talking to someone earlier today too about Kamala Harris. If they somehow pull this deal off, Joe Biden, hypothetically, how long do you think he'll actually be president, if at all, before there's a swap? Do you think there's going to be a swap made? Maybe Pelosi?
Um, I don't think Biden is going to be able to live for 8 years to be president. He looks horrible. I know everybody thinks I'm like ultra liberal, SJW, Antifa, Soros supporter, but Trump, even though he's pretty fat and his hair is weird and his face is orange, he appears much healthier than Biden. He appears much healthier physically and mentally. I honestly cannot see Joe Biden living for 8 years. And I think after 4 years, there's no way he's in any type of prime condition. It's only downhill mentally for Biden.
Yeah, he's certainly on a lot of meds, no doubt. But got a comment here from Bob K. I believe he's from Australia, and I think I mentioned talking to one of my Australian fans. I'm not sure if that was you, Bob, or not, but if it is, please reach out again, as I don't think I've interviewed anybody from Australia yet, and things have gotten pretty bad over there. Yeah, but what would proof be to you, Shrimp? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's voter fraud. I just don't know how much there is. I don't know how you can say millions or whatever, unless you're in like the CIA or you're in like Donald Trump himself or you're Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. I'm just looking at it, and I spent a few hours looking up Dominion and is it based in Canada or Spain? It's really tough to tell. I can't really tell from just looking at it. I think there is voter fraud, but I don't think anyone's really going to know how much.
Yeah.
And you can also say, was there voter fraud to make Trump president? Did he cheat to become president? It's kind of a dangerous path because um, people are going to question like every election from now on. People are going to say there's probably only voter fraud if a Republican loses. That might be a little bit dangerous.
Okay, let's talk, Bob. I think I have your email. I'm not sure, but if you could shoot me an email, let's set up a time this week, if possible, to talk to Bob from Australia, see how things are going there in the place down under. Jordan Sekalo, working on behalf of Trump. Thanks to Connie for providing his Twitter. And again, per another source here, they used Dominion to sway an election in Venezuela. I believe it was for Hugo Chavez as well. And we know, obviously, Venezuela, very left-leaning socialist quagmire of the country. Yeah, so that was back in the day. So he died in 2013. But it's interesting how this Dominion software, as far as I can tell, doesn't have a Wikipedia page. I could be wrong here, but Peter Strzok, for example, has no picture on his Wikipedia page. So I'm not finding anything on Dominion there. So that's why we have to do all this digging on external websites outside of freaking Wikipedia, which again is censored depending on the topic as well, which is quite unfortunate. Because I actually did a 180 on that. At first, when I was young, we were always told Wikipedia is a poor source. Then it became a very valid source, and now it's a semi good source. Depends on what you're looking up on Wikipedia. It's related to politics. You can be sure that you're not going to find everything on there. Certainly not as it relates to anything conservative, right wing. Another example, the documentary that I mentioned last night, ShrimpZoo, that I watched with my friend Wes. I'm actually at my friend Wes's house right now. I'm coming to you live from Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. So we got East Coast to East Coast here from South Carolina to Buffalo, New York. if you go on the Wikipedia page for that documentary, it calls it not a documentary, but a propaganda film. And this is going back to the Russia scandal, the supposed Russian interference in the election. All 65 members of the intelligence community and anyone else who testified on that particular day, including the head of the FBI at the time, James Comey, did not, under oath, say that they saw or found or had any evidence at all of Russian collusion. So it was all coming from the media. So I think Trump has been alone for a long time. I think he, shout out to Luna there in the background. I think he has been alone for a long time. I think it even took him a bit of time to adjust and realize just how alone he in fact is. Trump is a disaster, Peter Strzok. And then 1 week later, Operation Crossfire Hurricane is opened up. But again, going back to current times, we're in the middle of this election hangover, this debate debacle. Another thing too is looking at just how who is censored on Twitter and who isn't. Twitter removed a video of Joe Biden speaking, or excuse me, misspeaking at a rally or some sort of gathering, and regardless of the fact that it actually happened and it's Joe Biden just being Joe Biden, they felt the need to remove that. Not to mention all the times, which are numerous now, countless, that Trump has been censored. We got the verified independent fact checkers on Instagram and Facebook now that automatically detect images that are what they deem to be propaganda or usually anti-Biden, some sort of critique of the left in general or the Democrats is considered censored. Fox News just took a huge dive in their ratings. They are no longer number one. The reason they were number one is because they were actually telling some truth. And of course, that is mostly Tucker Carlson. But again, Tucker Carlson is bound by his contract. And certainly the people at Fox are smart enough to sign him through an election period. They're not going to let Tucker Carlson go free reign at a critical time such as now. So there's only so much that Tucker Carlson can say. But that is the deal with the devil that you make when you take all of that money from the establishment like Tucker Carlson did. Now, I like Tucker sometimes. I think he says some good stuff, but he is still part of Fox. He is still part of the beast, as Paul Cottrell calls it. He's part of the Matrix, and that's really what we're fighting here. I was thinking about this yesterday. It's like trying to convince everyone around you in a way that you're not crazy when everywhere you look, it says otherwise. It says that Trump is the bad guy. It's literally like being stuck in a matrix. People say, well, where's the proof of that? Or I got told once by someone in my family, well, what happens is something happens and it gets reported. And that just shows you, I think, the extent to which people, especially older generations, have trust for the institution still. But it's really a hypnosis. I think it's a hypnosis. And I think the young people are either hypnotized into hating Trump or they don't really care that much about anything that's going on, or they're scared by it. And I think they're just actively ignoring it. So it's quite unfortunate. I feel at times that it may be all for naught, but we're doing our best here trying to bring the truth to everyone. And certainly it helps having a network. So I don't know what your thoughts are on all that, Shrimp. You can I'll hand it off to you.
People in the comments are saying OAN is suspended from YouTube, but They've posted videos today, a bunch of videos today. 1, 2, 3, 4. They posted 5 videos today. So maybe they're not banned, but maybe they got some type of copyright strike or some type of warning where they can't post new videos, but their channel's still up. You really can't look at a channel to see if they're monetized or not because YouTube places ads on pretty much all videos. I'm not really sure how true that story is because they posted videos today. Maybe they have some type of restriction from uploading new videos because some type of strike though.
Yeah, I mean, they are. I think I've seen a few of their videos. They actually reported on Jenny Moore's death, who was investigating the Clintons, and she was actually big into investigating child trafficking. So they do a lot of great stuff, but they have gotten very big, I know. So I think they're at like 1 million subs or close to thereabouts. But we had a comment here from Janet. Oh, I actually met up with Janet recently. So shout out to Miss B for meeting up with us. I think it was on Saturday, if I remember correctly. But she says it's not Republican versus Democrat, it's cabal versus people. So no matter who is rigging votes, it needs to stop. I agree. I think Janet's right. I think that I don't know, like by hook or by crook, Trump is the guy. You know, Trump is the guy right now, and I know people don't want to hear that. I don't necessarily think he's a good man per se. Certainly not by certain standards, maybe certain religious standards, but he does seem to have his country as a priority for him. He doesn't seem to be a swamp creature. And I think that the biggest issue is war, is anti-war. Trump doesn't want, he wants to end these wars. He's basically put a pause on them in a sense. But and that's something else I think people don't get. Is you can be for war, you can be for torture. That's all good as long as you're not perceived as a racist. That is right in America. That's what it's all about. Everyone's for war. Everyone's for torture. Everyone's for bombing brown people in the Middle East or black people in Africa, wherever. But if you're racist or if you're perceived as racist, perceived as sexist, then that is just the worst abomination that could ever happen. That's the state of American politics right now.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't believe that the election fraud was really a major thing. I'm sure there was some fraud, and I really don't believe in any of the QAnon stuff. But like, the political system did discourage other people from running. It only promoted 2 people running. Really, we don't really have fair elections because it's always 2 people running that people usually don't really like that much. We don't have a choice of like 5 or 10 people. We only have 2 parties. And looking at this, I don't care if, like, to be a little selfish, I was kind of hoping Trump won because I think the stock market would have done better. And I'm a day trader, so I was hoping that Trump would win because that would be favorable to me. But I've been to these protests, and I live in like a part of America where it's very heavily Democrat or Republican. It's only like 1,000 people that live where I live, and it's farmland. It's conservative farmland. There's still a good amount of Biden supporters here, and if Trump wins or whatever, which is there's pretty much no chance of him winning, but if Trump were to remain president, and not, again, I'm saying this as somebody, in my job, it's preferable that he remains president because financially I'll be much better off if Trump remains in power. That's only to my benefit. Trump didn't win, and if he actually stays in power, America is going to burn to the ground. And I don't care I don't really care that much who's the president. I just want my life to go well. And like, I want America not to burn to the ground. But if Trump were to remain president, looking at this like a prepper stance, somebody who's neutral, who prefers Trump over Biden, probably if Trump were to remain in power, America is going to burn to the ground. If Biden is going to assume the office, it's already those steps have already taken place. Every single one of Trump's lawsuits have been thrown out. All the electors and all the swing states have processed the votes for Biden. If Trump were to remain as president, America would burn to the ground. Antifa, BLM would take to the streets. And let's face it, the Republicans in America are a minority and they're weak. A few people will take their guns to Michigan courthouse or some Congress house or something, and that's it. 5 or 6 people with guns, with AKs, will go to some hillbilly country congressional building, and that's all that will happen. There won't be police stations across the country that burn down. There won't be dozens of cops that are assassinated by radicals. Republicans will not do that. They're not going to go kill police. They're not going to go execute them in broad daylight like Democrats will. Anyone saying that is out of touch with reality and hasn't been to the protest, hasn't had interactions with the police, I have family and friends that are Republican, Democrat, Black Lives Matter. I've talked with Antifa. I've talked with MAGA supporters. If Trump is to remain president, America will burn to the ground. If Biden is the president, nothing will happen except for 5 or 6 people with guns going to a courthouse, and then they yell at the police and then they leave the next day. That's all that will happen. If Trump remains president, there's a huge chance of a civil war. Huge chance. It will destroy America. And this is somebody whose job would benefit from Trump remaining president. I made a lot of money because Trump did pretty well with the stock market, much better than I think Biden would have done. But if Trump remains president, America will burn to the ground. There's too many protesters that are liberal and Democrats and Antifa. There's way more Antifa than there are MAGA people causing trouble. MAGA people aren't going to smash shops up and burn cop cars. Just won't happen.
Biden wins, learn Chinese. That's funny. But don't you think, Shrimp, that that's kind of letting like fear dictate what you're doing? Because like when you look at the way you explained it, it seems like the only reason you don't want Trump to win is because the radical leftists, the communists, are threatening literally violence. And I agree with you. I think they are threatening violence, but yeah, don't you think that's letting fear like dictate it seems like a trade-off for short-term kind of comfort in a way versus long-term freedom, because it'll be tough, I think, for sure, but I think I compared to like ripping off a Band-Aid, right? Where yeah, we're going to have, well, Trump will have to deal with the communists and the violent leftists, which there's no doubt that they are. Anybody who has a brain, who's been watching anything, it clearly can see that it's the leftists who are instigating the violence, not anybody really on the right side. So yeah, it just seems to me like, I mean, yeah, Trump would have that problem, but he may, I think, once he gets that election secure, deploy the National Guard. Now, I don't want to see that happen, but yeah, the reasoning there, it seemed like it was just under the threat of violence. It seems like the only reason that you want, or maybe you don't want, but you would, you think that Biden is better off for the country.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. My reasons are selfish, and I'm looking at this as like somebody from another country, somebody who doesn't care about Biden or Trump. There's going to be massive problems in America if Trump were to remain president. I don't feel like I'll lose any freedoms with either president. I see if Trump were to remain president, he's much less warlike than Biden, but Trump will probably start a Cold War with China, maybe. But on the other hand, Biden will probably go to war with Syria, and he'll probably start a cold war with Russia. My life's going to be the same. All the laws are going to be the same. The only difference between Trump and Biden is Biden will probably ask people to wear a mask, and Trump won't. And the COVID restrictions are pretty much up to governments. Like right now, Trump is president. For everybody licking Trump's boots, I can't go out to eat in New York. I can't go to a gym. Every business where I am, like I tried to go out to eat the other day, and when I went out, I realized everything was in lockdown. I didn't realize we were in a red zone. Everything's closed here, and Trump's president. It does not matter one bit because we have Cuomo and de Blasio. It doesn't matter if Trump is the president and he's conservative and Republican because my city is still locked down. Everything here is locked down. You can't do anything. The hospitals here are shut down too. I have 2 autoimmune diseases, and I have to get like surgeries and biopsies and stuff. I'm having a very hard time getting any of that done because everything's locked down, and the hospitals are basically packed. They're having very hard trouble coping with it. And Trump is still the president. My state's going to be locked down regardless of who's president. The lockdowns and the mask laws, that's all going to be regional, up to your mayor or your governor. So I don't think I'll lose any freedoms. I think if I wanted more freedoms, but I wanted to risk dying of COVID or risk getting sick or move to someplace with a worse healthcare system but more freedoms, I'll move to Texas or something. And Texas is going to be Texas no matter if Trump or Biden is president. I just think that the governors have way more power than the presidents regarding freedoms because there's people in Republican states under Republican president that are locked down right now, being told not to leave their houses, and there's mask mandates. And that's Republican governors, Republican president. So I don't think I'll lose any freedoms no matter who is president.
Yeah, I can definitely see that perspective as being valid, especially coming from a state like New York. But I think looking at it in terms of red versus blue or Democrats versus Republicans is not the right frame of reference because it's really literally everybody versus Trump, and they thought he wasn't gonna win, and that's why they let him get as far as he did. And when he did win, they Peter Strzok said it. He's like, this is a disaster. So it's the intelligence agencies, all the intelligence agencies. It's Republicans and Democrats alike, and it's China. It's Justin Trudeau, who's owned by China. It's all of them, and Trump trying to put America first, I think, is a thorn in their side because it means that we stop selling out or exporting the middle class to China. But I think you have a good point. But I also think that the timing is something that should be taken into account as well. If Trump gets reelected in January, that's when he'll be in February. That's when he'll be at the peak of his power for his second term. That's when he can override all the BS. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it look like America is bad under Trump. And you're right, it's up to the governors. But so in that case, and I think consequently, the governors should hold responsibility for making the economy tank as it has this year. Trump did not want to shut down the economy, and I don't think we should have. If you look at the way Sweden handled it, they are doing just as fine as anybody in the world right now, and they didn't do any lockdowns. So, and that's what Trump wanted to do. He wanted to open up back by, I think it was Easter, and people were saying he was crazy. But I think the pandemic's over. Personally, I just see no reason to do these mask mandates. It's always been about the election in my eyes. It's always been about 3rd of November. It was a pre-planned coordinated sting operation.
You think it's over?
Do I think Trump has a chance? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think the pandemic is over. I think the end is in sight. But, like, for example, today a report came out that by February, they're predicting 4,000 people a day will start dying. We're already at 1 to 2,000 people a day dying right now. Every 1 to 2 years, only 2,000 people die of the flu. A lot of people say 60,000 people die a year of the flu, but they're just Googling that. They're not reading the whole statement. 60,000 people have died in the last 12 years of the flu. Usually only like 1 to 3,000 people die a year of the flu. If it's a really bad flu, it might be 6 or 10,000, but we haven't had something like that in a really long time, like since swine flu. The regular flu, like a couple thousand people in America die. The same amount of people that die of flu in a year die every day of COVID right now. And I don't see enough people wanting to wear masks. And I don't care if people wear masks or not. I wear a mask. I don't care what you do. But I don't see enough people wearing the mask, Democrats or Republicans. And I don't see a large portion of people wanting to get vaccinated. And I see a lot of it's COVID's in like animals and stuff. And it's also only 1 or 2% death rate, so it's not enough people don't take it that serious. So I don't think the pandemic will end anytime soon.
Yeah, I may have been premature to say it's over, but I think we're at the tail end of it. It's just I don't see anybody who can justify the lockdown to me anymore. Do you think the lockdown's justified, Shrimp?
So the lockdowns, I'm locked down right now because everything's closed, and that's kind of annoying. I wanted to go out to eat, but also, okay, so yesterday, and I'm going to do this video later today, I went to a COVID testing center. It was packed. There's like 30 cars every 10 minutes going through there, and this is in a town of like 2,000 people. There must have been several hundred people there getting tested. I don't know. The COVID statistics probably are skewed. I'm sure that liberals are overcounting the deaths, but I still think it's at least like a 1% death rate. I don't know. I don't think it's we're out of the water yet. And somebody says the hospitals are empty. I made like 4 or 5 videos in the hospital. I went to the ER because I was sick the other day. I couldn't be seen in the hospital here. It was a 7-hour wait to be told they couldn't see me or do anything. And then I made a doctor's appointment for 3 weeks. And then I couldn't even be seen in the office. I can't go in to see my regular doctor. I've videotaped 2 coronavirus testing sites where hundreds of cars were going through here. And I videotaped myself at the ER. The hospitals are shutting down. If your kid breaks their arm, you're going to wait 10 hours. And at this point, if your kid breaks their arm in Buffalo, New York, and you go to the hospital, they might not be able to be treated, or you're going to have to wait an entire day. I don't care if you say COVID's fake, that's fine. Then there's an insane regular flu virus going around. And I filmed the people that were sick. They're all sweating and coughing. They're not paid by George Soros. It's just hundreds of people in the hospital that I filmed on my channel. A lot of people are sick and the testing sites are packed. I went to one yesterday and took video footage. And I've been to the hospital. I can't be seen. I can't be seen by my doctors. I have 2 surgeries coming up and they keep getting postponed. It's taken almost a year to get these surgeries now. The hospitals are shutting down. Anybody that says that it's fake, that's fine. COVID's fake then, but then we have a serious flu or cold going around that's shutting the hospitals down. Either way, I proved it myself. I don't care if you say COVID's fake or if the numbers are skewed. If it's a 0% death rate, that's fine. The hospitals are shutting down. I also have a friend that's a nurse. He's saying about a third of the people in the ICU are dying and they're almost out of beds. My friend that's a nurse had to get a respirator mask for me because his hospital doesn't have them anymore. They don't have gloves or masks. They ran out. So if COVID can be fake, I don't care. The hospitals are shutting down.
Look at this comment. This is the best comment of the night. Everyone is using COVID as an excuse for bad customer service.
Yeah, the healthcare system sucks right now. Where I am in Western New York, you can't get surgeries, you can't see your doctor. People are going to start dying here of heart attacks. They're going to start dying of way more serious things than COVID.
That's what they want. That's what the globalists want. They
You
know it.
can't, you can't get any type of medical treatment here. It's gonna be much more serious than COVID because you're gonna have people are gonna start dying in the ER soon in the waiting rooms. That's definitely gonna happen because I've seen it myself now a few times where I filmed it. There's gonna be people with heart attacks dying. There's gonna be like I've been unable to get my surgery now for almost a year. It's kind of bugging me out. I can't get any type of service almost. So it's gonna get worse than this. The hospitals are not going to be providing service. So that's just not fake. If you think COVID's fake, then I won't even disagree with you. But if you're going to say the hospitals are empty, go to a hospital yourself. That's simply not the case. The hospitals are on the verge of collapse here. I have mega voters, friends in the country in little hillbilly towns. I live in a little hillbilly town, and I have friends here that are hillbillies, and they voted for mega, and they're nurses, and they're telling me about a third of the people that are sick on ventilators or dying, and that they've had to get masks for me because their hospital ran out. I would like to move. I would like to move. I wouldn't. I live in a Republican city, so I don't want to live in a Democrat area because there's Antifa and BLM, and they cause massive trouble. I don't really agree with MAGA and stuff, but they're much more polite. You can go to the Trump rallies and talk to people without them trying to attack you and stuff, and they're also not carrying around like shields and weapons to hit you with normally. Yeah, Republicans are much nicer. It's not you can't go safely to a BLM protest, and I choose to live in a Republican area because it is safer. It's
I don't even
safer.
call them Republicans anymore. I just call them MAGA or people voting for Trump. But dude, the leftists or the Biden people, they won't even show their faces. Like I try to interview them at the various spots I've gone to. They don't want to talk. They don't want to discuss. They don't want to debate. They don't want to argue. They don't want to show their faces. It's like interacting with children. But let's leave it at that, Shrimp. We've been going an hour, and let's reconvene again this week. It's Tuesday, the 24th of November, folks. This has been the Pandemic Podcast with Addy Ads, Anakin Skywalker, and ShrimpZoo. ShrimpZoo, YouTuber from Buffalo, New York. I am from the Midwest. I'm a public intelligence agent, interviewer, media publisher, and all around great guy. At least I think so. We will reconvene again, you guys. We're working on Shrimp. We're trying to get him to see the good in Trump. See the
About the viewers.
And I think it makes me sharpen my debate skills too, which I like. So let's reconvene again this week, Shrimp.
Sounds good.
Stay frosty, folks. Till next time.